Can we get a round of applause? Congressman Yoho. Thank you for being here, sir. I'm doing good. Why don't you sit right here?
You want me to sit?
Yes, I'll have you sit.
I've been sitting all day.
So, Congressman Yoho, I know you had votes all day today.
We did.
How dare they have votes?
I just can't
when
believe
we needed
they
you
do
here.
that.
Well, listen, I know you pretty well, but I'm going to give you a proper introduction for those of us who don't know you in the room. We do have a pretty good Florida contingent here, so I suspect they're more familiar with you. But Congressman Yoho is, represents, most importantly, the people of the 3rd District of Florida. He is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, where you chair the
Asia-Pacific Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs.
Asia-Pacific Subcommittee. I should have had that in my head. That's okay. It's
And
been a long day.
And I sit on the Western Hemisphere.
And Western Hemisphere, very good. You're a leader of the House Freedom Caucus, co-chair of the Effective Foreign Assistance Caucus, so you're kind of like a USGLC spokesperson wrapped into a member of Congress. We like that.
That's right.
It's good.
On the conservative side.
Yes, exactly. So I want to start off with actually a video, but let me give you a little story. About a year ago, we at USGLC, we started noticing a trend, and that trend was that Congress was passing bipartisan pieces of legislation at a really fast clip. We passed the Global Food Security Act,
right.
which you were a huge part of, the Electrify Africa Act. We passed legislation on girls' empowerment, on transparency and accountability of foreign aid programs, and the list goes on and on. So we started noticing this trend, and we thought, our Genius Comms team thought, you know what? Let's tell that story through a video. So I want to show the video. You are a star of it. And then I'm going to ask you some questions. So can we cue that video?
Some say Washington is broken.
That our country is just hopelessly divided.
But let's be honest, people like to exaggerate.
No. Yes.
The truth is, there's a lot that still brings us together, both Republicans and Democrats.
Democrats and Republicans.
A consistent bipartisan effort.
To help lift people out of poverty around the world.
In the last 2 years, Congress passed significant pieces of legislation that strengthen American global leadership,
Advance our economic interest.
make us more secure, and champion our values.
How about the Water for the World Act?
It promotes safe, clean drinking water for 1 billion people around the world.
Not bad.
Or the Girls Count Act.
That's going to ensure that girls around the world are protected.
From trafficking and exploitation.
Allowing them to get the education they deserve.
And that can be game-changing.
Together, we crafted and passed the Electrify Africa Act.
This bill is a step toward fulfilling America's promise to reach 50 million people in Africa and create
30,000 megawatts of generation capacity.
Now that's powerful.
That's huge. The Global Food Security Act is a big one.
We are tackling the root causes of hunger through America's Feed the Future initiative.
And already lifting millions of farmers out of poverty.
And providing millions of children nutritional support.
We joined together to pass the Foreign Aid Transparency and Accountability Act.
That bill ensures an even greater return on investment for the American taxpayer.
It's a big win for this small
but strategic 1% of the budget.
I voted for that.
I voted for that.
I voted for that.
I voted for that too.
And so did every one of my colleagues.
every
Single.
One.
We even got a little wild.
No, not that kind of wild.
We got the End Wildlife Trafficking Act into the end zone.
That's END, Eliminate, Neutralize, and Disrupt Wildlife Trafficking.
That law helps cut off billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars to the terrorist organizations from the illegal wildlife trade.
And we just voted for the End Modern Slavery Initiative Act.
A powerful step towards ending sex and labor enslavement for good.
That moves more than 27 million people.
In 165 countries.
closer to freedom.
Yeah, I'd say broken is perhaps a bit overstated.
We're getting things done for the American people and for the world.
Clean water.
Rights for women and girls.
Energy infrastructure.
Food security.
Preventing wildlife trafficking.
Thwarting terrorists.
Ending modern slavery.
It all adds up.
It all serves to make our nation safer
and stronger.
I'm not saying we don't disagree on a few things.
But at the end of the day,
we're working together for our country.
To build a better, safer, and more prosperous world.
And that is something we can all be proud of.
That was a good video. You
It was a
guys
good
did a good
video.
job on that.
That brings a little tear to my eye every time I watch it. All right, so I'm going to ask you a question, Congressman, but I want to start with a question for you. Who thinks Washington can be a little partisan sometimes? I think you're all shy. I think everyone probably wants to raise their hand. In a seemingly partisan Washington, this is an issue that really is bipartisan. You saw it with all those members and all those votes over the last 2 years, most of which passed by voice vote, which means they passed unanimously. So why is, with all the partisan rancor, why is this issue, support for kind of development and diplomacy programs, why does that break through on a bipartisan basis?
Yeah, well, it's the nature of the bill. It's a good bill, and you look at what what we're trying to accomplish with that bill. If you take Electrify Africa, we came out in strong support of that in the very beginning, and you know, I came from the right wing, you know, the side that I came. I'll be real honest with you. I came up here to get rid of foreign aid. But after being here for 4 years, I've become a lot more learned in that process that you can't cut foreign aid. You have to use it more effectively. And when you look at the Empower Africa, or the Electrify Africa, if you look at our country back in the early 1900s, very few people had electricity outside of the urban areas. So the government went to work with the co-ops and brought power to the rural areas. And I saw that in Africa. When you bring power to the people, you empower the people, and the empowered people are the ones that are going to fix their government. And I feel very strongly in that. So we took that message to my conservative colleagues, and they said, you know, you're right, because you can't cut foreign aid off with a hatchet. As General Mattis said, if you do that, take that money you save or you think you save and buy more ammunition, because you're going to need it.
Exactly, exactly. That's great. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So you're a conservative Republican, I'm a Republican. I think some people think, we just saw the video, it's bipartisan, that means Republicans and Democrats support it. But I don't think people really realize that there really is this Republican legacy on foreign assistance issues, really started under President Reagan with his Peace Through Strength. We just did a little budget briefing before you got here, and what I didn't mention was that one of the peaks of foreign assistance was in 1985, right under President Reagan's Peace Through Strength. He believed in military strength, but also diplomatic and development strength as well. So from a give me the kind of conservative perspective on development and why it's good policy. Since you gave us the bipartisan one, now I'll ask you for the conservative one.
Well, the way I look at it, the thing that I see is, if you look at the foreign aid we've given over the multitude of years, it's in the trillions of dollars when you add it all up. And we should focus on, we need a paradigm shift, and this is where the conservative side that I see, that I sell to my colleagues, we need to have a paradigm shift in our foreign aid, to go from aid to trade. And that's what we want to do, is we want to focus on how we take a country, and if you look at our top 15 trading partners, 11 of them were recipients of foreign aid. And if we've done that in the past, we know it works. We need to put more efforts into that. And the conservative thing is, we're going through fiscal constraints in this country. Austerity measures are coming. I was at a conference in the beginning of the year, and I got handed a report that says Social Security would get a 25% cut across the board within 12 years. I mean, I don't know about you, but that scares me. I'm 62. I've worked all my life. I want my money. And if that's going to happen, what y'all do, you guys are the boots on the ground. You're the ones that are going to make our foreign aid effective, and we're relying on you to get the biggest bang for that buck. And I can't think of a better conservative idea than to transition somebody from foreign aid to trade with an economy and a strong relationship, and we can focus on economy, national security, and better cooperation between us. And I hope you all have the idea that you're working yourself out of a job. Because if we do what we do and we're successful at it, we'll be out of a job, and I know we'll never be out of a job, but we should be closer to that.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, if you look at one of the greatest success stories of our foreign assistance is really South Korea. Now we get back in trade with South Korea much, much more on an annual basis than we ever gave them in foreign assistance. And so it's really one of those stories where you can take a country that's dependent on foreign assistance and turn it into a trading partner.
And you
later
brought
down
up
the
South
road.
Korea. If you look at South Korea, the amount of money we have in trade, I think it's the amount of money that we spent in foreign aid is more than 6 times what we've gotten in return, if you look at that. And I just think it's a great model, and I think that's the conservative value that I see. You know, not only did we benefit from it, but they benefited from it.
Exactly, exactly. It's actually a good segue because I want to ask you, I'm going to give you time to brag on one of the bills that you just introduced recently, the Economic Growth and Development Act, which we're a big fan of at USGLC. This is really one of those bills that if you want to create sustainable economic partners for the future, one of the ways to do that is innovative solutions in development assistance, and one of those is public-private partnerships. And so your bill really, I think, it helps to better facilitate public-private
Absolutely.
partnerships. Is that right?
No, that's absolutely right. And I'm going to do some of the reading or talking points here. That's why I introduced the Economic Growth and Development Act, which is aimed at modernizing our foreign aid and making it as effective as possible. Keep in mind the fiscal restraints by strengthening the alignment and coordination between U.S. development agencies and the private sector. It accomplishes this through 3 key points, and those are, if you'll allow me, establishing an interagency mechanism to provide private companies a single point of contact within government to coordinate across all development agencies and departments.
It's a novel idea, a single point of contact.
Imagine that. There's over 12 agencies that are dealing with foreign aid, with over probably closer to 70 departments. How do you, if you're a private sector and you want to kind of tap into that, to do a project in Northern Africa, how do you work through that cobweb? And so that's one of the things we want to do, strengthening the private sector participation and consultation within a multi-year development program process that guide country-level allocations to U.S. resources. And then the last part of it is institutionalizing constraints to growth and investment analysis to enhance opportunities for public-private sector collaboration and co-investment. What that means is so many times you'll go into a country and they'll block out your investments in there because they don't want the competition. This opens that up to a transparent process to where they have to. And so we're really excited about this. And I did an interview the other day, and they asked me specifically about the Freedom Caucus, you know, because I'm a member of that. I'm not the chairman of it, but I am an active member in it. And they wanted to know how that was going to fly by that. I've got 2 members of the Freedom Caucus already on it. We're presenting it there tonight. And I gave it to a member the other day, and he goes, I'm against all foreign aid. I said, exactly, I was too. But if you think you can take a hatchet and stop it, it's not going to happen. And if we have the House and the Senate and the White House now, and we couldn't do what we wanted to do with the health care bill, I think it's a pretty clear indication we need to look long term. How can we reform it? Because we're not going to be in power forever. When the other party comes in, which they will, we want to make sure we've left a legacy to have the most effective foreign aid policy in place so that the American taxpayers get the biggest bang for their dollar. Keep in mind the fiscal constraints that this country is looking at. And that's where, again, what you do, you guys do well. We just need to do it better.
That's great. I want to shift gears to kind of the security message. You know, USGLC is a coalition of businesses, nonprofit faith leaders, and military leaders. We have about 150 veterans in the room. One of our most...
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your service. One of our most famous veterans actually happens to lead the Pentagon at the moment. Secretary Mattis, when he was General Mattis, was a member of our National Security Advisory Council, and you quoted him earlier with his famous quote about, if you don't fund the State Department, then I need to buy more ammunition. And what we've seen over the last several months, frankly, since the skinny budget proposal came out that had a 32% cut to these programs, is that our military leaders are some of the strongest voices in support of protecting the international affairs budget. They see it as a very critical piece of our national security strategy.
Sure.
So in your conversations with military leaders, or maybe in your travel, why do you think this resonates, one, and what is the story behind the State Department and USAID, our diplomacy and development, being such critical components of our national security?
Well, I think the military have been there. They have seen what works and doesn't work. And if you're not working with the people to develop economics and a source of revenue or jobs for the individuals in that country, you're going to have that turmoil all the time. And we know the best way to bring people out of poverty is to create industry, create jobs that they have buy-in. It's their industry. And I think it was Admiral Mike Mullins and General Jones just wrote an editorial talking about this very thing. You know, again, if you read the Bob Gates's book, Duty, they talk about the failure of us not really going and engaging in the Middle East and Afghanistan and Iraq the way we should have. And it's a lesson we can't afford to make that mistake again. And if you look at countries like Liberia or Sri Lanka has come out of a 30-year civil war. We are assisting them and we're working with them. But for us to pull back in the new budget says just get rid of the aid for them. It'll help that country roll back to where they were, and we really don't need to do that. We need to build on things that have worked and move forward with the idea that our goal is to transition from aid to trade.
Exactly. So it's not really just building economic partners, it's building friends and allies too.
Oh, absolutely. You know, that's a good point, because if you go back 10 years ago, there was roughly 23 to 25 conflict areas around the world. Today, it's over 75 conflict areas around the world. You look at our fiscal constraints, it puts more pressure on us, and there's less we can do because there's more fires. So we have to be that much more effective at what we do. We can't afford to go backwards. And we have to build those alliances. And the ASEAN countries, you know, chairing that committee, we have we've met with the 10 nations of the ASEAN countries. And if you look at Singapore, we did a free trade agreement with them. I think it was in 2006. It took about 6 years for it to kick in. And now they're a strong trading partner and ally. And we just need to repeat that over and over again.
So one of the things that USGLC, in addition to kind of being an advocacy organization that really fights for the budget for these programs, we also fight to make sure that they are as strong and as effective as possible. That's why we love the Global Economic and Development Growth Act. It's strengthening programs that using that public-private partnership to get more effective use of taxpayer dollars, which I think we can all agree is most important. So you're chair of the Effective Foreign Assistance Caucus.
Yes, ma'am.
Congressman Andrew Crenshaw, your predecessor, founded it. You took it over this year with his retirement with Congressman Adam Smith from Seattle. I know we have the Washington delegation here today. So what are your goals for the caucus? What do you guys plan to do? What's your goal in kind of educating members that this is a really important piece of the congressional priority to make sure that we're continuously strengthening programs?
Well, I think you brought up a great point, and it's like that story I was telling about the member. I was telling him about the Economic Growth and Development Act. He goes, I want to get rid of it. I want to get rid of all foreign aid. Our goal is to educate members of Congress on how we can't afford to get rid of it. We have to use it effectively, keeping in mind aid to trade. I mean, that's kind of our motto. We're going to do a paradigm shift. And when we sit there and educate people, by bringing them to the meetings, or tonight I'll be meeting with the Freedom Caucus, a lot of the members have my palm card here on this particular bill. And we're going to speak about this because their mindset where I was 4 years ago, and our goal is to educate them so that they're like saying, you know what, this is the best way to go. Because if we can get another South Korea or another Singapore, or if you look at Vietnam, the conflict we had, 50 years ago, and you look at where we are today, they're transitioning to becoming a strong trading partner. And I think it'll make not just us, but the world safer.
That's great. So we are all going to the Hill tomorrow. About 500 of us. We have over 200 meetings or so in the House and Senate, which is great because we also have about 200 members of Congress on record in support of development and diplomacy programs and opposing kind of really drastic, disproportionate cuts to these programs. You yourself are one of those that we count as on the record. You had this great testimony in front of the Appropriations Committee earlier this year. So I want to ask for our audience here today, how do we continue to build on that? We've seen retired military officers, we've seen faith leaders, business leaders, members of Congress, kind of all talk about the importance of protecting these programs. Any advice for something new we could do or something in addition that we need to do or we need to ask tomorrow?
Yeah, it is. Number one, I want to commend you for coming up and lobbying Congress on such an important issue. We rely on you to come up and educate us on issues. You know, you come up here, there's about 40,000 pieces of legislation that we get exposed to in a year, you know, between rules, regulations, and all that. And we're like at the vortex of a tornado. And if you're not coming in and sticking your hand in there, we won't know about it. And it's the education that you do that will inform that member of Congress to get a little bit more information. And all you have to do is open up the door. Feel free to use my name because I was probably one of the hardest sells. But as you brought up the appropriations meeting, I remember Hal Rogers was there, and I forget the ranking Democrat.
Anita Lowy.
Yeah, it was her. And when I walked in, they're like, uh-oh, this is going to be trouble. But when I got done, and I've not had many people say, he was very elegant in what he said. And I wanted to have him call my wife and let him know that. But again, if somebody with the mindset that I have can change and see the common sense, the conservative value of this, I think a lot of people can. And I would challenge you to tell people to come talk to me. Say, we had some people in our office talking about foreign aid, and they said, talk to you. We'll be happy to explain it to them, because we have to bring our resources together at this point in time in our history, and we have to forge stronger alliances with all nations. And Donald Trump, you know, with his mantra, make America great again, America first, I agree with that. But the only way we can make America great again is if we partner with your nation or with your nation and help you achieve your goals. And by doing that, we all become stronger. And that's how we're going to have a more stable world.
That's fantastic. So you guys heard it. I know during my presentation I said if you come across someone who is opposed to you, I said to let me know. The congressman said to let him know. So we'll do that. We'll put you on those guys.
There's a great technique. You guys probably already know this, but when they say, I don't want any foreign aid, it's feel, felt, found. I know how you feel. I felt the same way, but this is what I found out. If you get rid of foreign aid, you're going to have to buy more ammunition.
There you go. Oh, my gosh. Well, that was fantastic. I know you have had an extremely busy day on Capitol Hill. You probably have an extremely busy evening. Sounds like you have quite the meeting tonight with the Freedom Caucus on your bill. I hope it goes well. Let us know what we can do to follow up. But I'm going to say thank you to Congressman Yoho for being here today. We
Lindsay,
really appreciate you making the effort.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic. I really appreciate you coming.
Y'all take care. Have a good day.
Thank you. You're fantastic.